Okay, so this video is part of the pelvis and hip series, and it's going to be to do with specifically the joint on the front of the hip, which is called the anterior superior iliac spine, for those of you who are into your anatomy and physiology. But emotionally, it relates to the experience of making things normal. Okay, and we're going to do a series of videos to highlight what happens when you make things normal, and then start to break apart that mechanism so that you can make creating extraordinary results, having growth and expansion, and having excitement in your future normal. Let's talk a little bit about this joint at the front of the hip, okay? So first of all, when we're born, our pelvises are super flexible. Like you only need to see a newborn baby put their foot in their mouth and you realize how flexible people are in this area. And the normal tendency, like what happens to the average person, if they're not doing yoga every day, or if they're not hypermobile, is that this area gets stronger as you get older, from being a child to being a teenager. And then at some point in the future, it starts to become less flexible, more rigid, less functional as we get older. So we kind of go through that bell curve experience, okay? Now, the key thing about that is it's different for every single person, okay? There's an average somewhere about how flexible people are and then how inflexible they get and when they start to get hip issues. But it doesn't really help you as an individual to compare yourself to other people all the time, or to expect that because somebody else had a relationship with their hips and their pelvis, even if they're related to you, like a sibling or a parent, that means that's going to happen to you. And one of the key issues that happens with the front of the hip is we start to gather information from lots of different areas in life, and sometimes it's because we want to feel more secure, and that's connected to the base chakra. We actually start to say, oh, it's normal that people have pain here, or it's normal that people put on weight here, or it's normal that people are less athletic and less functional. And so I then just slot myself into that norm, okay? It's normal for my family to have this issue or that issue. And we even start to talk about it being genetic, like it runs in the family, or it's just how things are. And the more we start to normalize this part of the body, equally the more we start to normalize our experience in life. So certain people will go off and have amazing adventures, they will be financially much more successful, and we will then either align ourselves with those and go, yes, I'm the kind of adventurous person, or I'm the kind of person who's an entrepreneur, and that's normal for me. Or that's for those people, what's normal for me is to have a smaller life, is to be more frustrated, is to stay in one place, or constantly have my life be about other people, my children, my work, but not really about me, okay? And that, whatever we start to make normal, starts to create an energy in this part of the body that becomes habitual, okay? It just becomes familiar, right? And then when something comes along that doesn't fit in that, it's weird and it's strange. Now, sometimes it's weird and it's strange because it's trying to buck the trend. It's trying to break you out of your normal behavior, okay? Like somebody who's not used to dancing, suddenly getting up and dancing in the middle of a restaurant, okay? Those of you who have ever been on holiday and been dragged up by the person from your table when you weren't expecting it, that's exactly what we're talking about. Now, if you are not making your body move in different directions on a regular basis, your body will start to restrict your flexibility because it likes to be super efficient, okay? And it will become normal for you to have an ache or a pain when you move in one particular direction, and to have freedom when you move in other directions. So that's why things like yoga or sports that challenge the way that you normally move are going to be really important in this area. But just as importantly is having a flexible mindset, like not writing off certain things, like going, oh, I could do that, or I might do that in the future, or I might just try that today, and being versatile, okay? Like having that adventurous aspect of self, being curious, okay? But very definitely noticing where things become normal for you. And some of the most challenging aspects of being normal, I'm going to look at when we look at the hints and tips for how to break out of that normality or that normalizing experience that locks down this area in the body. Okay, so now let's look at how do we break out of what's become normal for us. Well, the first thing you want to notice is that it's become normal. Okay, so if you never move your furniture around, if you never redecorate your space, if you always wear the same colors, like then you want to start to notice, oh, that's become normal for me and familiar. It's like, it means I don't have to think about it. But what's that doing in terms of creating tram lines in my mind? And those tram lines then becoming tram lines in my body, which means I can't move outside of my normal range of movement. Okay, so that's the first thing, is noticing habits that you're not challenging. And even if you just challenge them at home, doing things differently. I sometimes will eat my dessert before my dinner on purpose, just to break that up, because who says you have to have dinner first, like, and then have pudding afterwards? Mostly it's my parents that used to say that when I was a kid, and I'm not a kid anymore. So I get to choose, and choice is a really flexible energy in this area. Another aspect of being normal is when something that's not good, not comfortable, or not nice becomes normal. Oh, I just have to do that. And so obligation, feeling like you have no options from outside to do with your work, to do with your exercise, to do with the kinds of events you go to, the kind of videos that you watch, for example. Like, notice the algorithms on social media will sometimes always give you the same kinds of things. You have to actually reach outside of those things to give yourself an option to experience something new. And so when normal shows up like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but I'm kind of used to this uncomfortableness, or this never really goes the way I want it to, but that's just how that normally is. That becomes something that creates expectation, and expectation as an emotional energy sits in the abdomen, and it actually starts to pull towards you more of the same experience. You know, so for example, often people complain, and it becomes normal for them to complain. So when it's cold and the weather's terrible, they complain. When it rains, they complain. When it's hot, they complain about being too hot. So then there's always a complaint. They never have a place where they actually feel content or happy or fulfilled, okay? And it's very easy to see that in other people, but you want to look within yourself. If your area of feeling comfortable is so small and your area of complaint becomes much bigger, that actually makes the healthy, functional part of this area of the body become really small, and the dysfunctional aspect of it and the experience of it not being how you want it to be become bigger. Okay, so you want to start to create spaces and environments where you can explore feeling comfortable, where you can be excited to be outside of your comfort zone, where even if you're growing and expanding, it's not something that is always in the same way, because then it's not growing and expanding. Okay. Then the other thing you want to do is notice who you're comparing yourself to, and wherever possible, compare yourself with 2 or more different groups of people. Okay, and quite often completely different groups of people. So one might be family, and the other one might be people at work, for example. But notice those areas where you don't like to compare yourself. If you find yourself hanging out with the same kinds of people all the time, at least do a visualization. Imagine yourself being with different groups of people, so that the opportunity, the space for that actually starts to show up for you. Yeah. Now, equally, you might notice you always hang out with people who are different. Okay, and you want to give yourself permission to actually then create opportunities to be around people who share particular demographics or particular experiences. Like, not always have to be the odd one out or have to be different, because that in itself can become normal. Being different all the time can become normal, and that can lock you into a particular pattern. So this is constantly bringing in energy that's fluid, that's flexible, that's adaptable, and it literally is like future-proofing this part of your body, giving yourself permission to go into later life and not have to suffer as much as the average person does in terms of health and well-being, or in terms of how you feel about this part of your body. Let me know what you get from this video, what shows up for you, and if that would be something that's not normal for you, I definitely recommend that you do that, as well as subscribing to my YouTube channel.